Hi everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and the purpose of this video is to give you a walkthrough of the final exam. So if you're looking for the final exam, I'm sorry, this is going to be a little noisy, but if you are looking for the final exam review, you can find it right here under the population section. I also have it right here underneath session 14. I have the final exam review, and this video will be located right here, okay? So your final exam, you are given between December 7th and December 12th to complete the final exam. It's the same setup as the midterm exam. You will be given 3 hours and 1 chance. So a couple of you emailed me and said, listen, I got in the shower, I went to work, and then I came back and the exam was closed. I cannot open that. So please make sure that you have 3 hours, or I mean, if you type out all the answers before the midterm, you will not need 3 hours to take the final exam. But if you're going to like research all the answers, which I really highly suggest you do not do, then you're going to have to give yourself 3 hours in one sitting to complete the final exam. Okay. And of course, this is a little bit different than the midterm because, well, it's not really, but your grades are due right away. So I need to grade those and get them in the system so that I can get your grades into the Banner portal. So let's walk through. I'm going to walk through the review for the finals. I'm going to click on it, and here we go. And let me open it up in Word just so that you can see the questions in an easier format. Okay, so this is the review for the final exam. The final exam is not cumulative, so it will cover air, climate change, population, water, renewable and non-renewable energy. You will be given 3 hours and 1 chance between the dates given in Canvas to take your final exam. You must use Google Chrome or Firefox to take your final exam. Do not have other web browsers or tabs open during the final exam as it may cause freezing. If your exam freezes, it cannot reopen. You will have 12 questions on your final exam. If you prepare, all you will need to do on your final exam is copy and paste into Canvas and edit your answers to the questions asked. It's the same exact setup as the midterm exam. The answer to each question should be at least, of course, 1 full paragraph in length. Each part of the question does not need to be a paragraph, but rather the entire answer as a whole needs to be a full paragraph. Some answers will be more than a paragraph. As always, on both the midterm and the final, I want you to use sources that I have given you. Please do not go outside the module to research websites or look up illegal web sources like Course Hero. Do not do that. Use the sources that I have given you in the modules to answer the questions, okay? So here we go. The answer to each question should be at least 1 full paragraph in length. Many of these questions, of course, are going to need more than 1 paragraph in length to answer them in a thoughtful and informative manner. Okay, so here we go. Session 7, air pollution. In your own words, this cannot be from the internet, but rather through the text and through your own words. Explain the ozone layer. Explain the purpose of the layer, how the layer is destroyed and how it can be fixed, what protocol was enacted to stop CFC use in developed countries. This will be probably more than a paragraph in length, and you can find this answer really. I've given you this answer in a roundup. So you want to go back and read my roundups and take a look, and then you can tell your answer based upon the information that I gave you in the roundup. Okay? Session 8 is climate change, and again, same format as the ozone layer. You're going to answer questions about what climate change is. Be sure to include how the greenhouse effect is related to climate change, pollutants responsible, and the consequences of climate change. Explain how climate change is related to global warming. Make sure you do that. A lot of students forget that part, and it's actually really, really important. I give you this answer in a roundup, so make sure you go back to the roundups, take a look at the answer, and then tell your answer based upon what I gave you in the roundup. This is really important because global warming and climate change are not the same thing. That one is the consequence of the other, and I want you to address that in your answer on the final exam. It's really important because it's a complex subject. I do not want ignorance to I want you to be aware of what's going on. So make sure you answer that question to the best of your ability, and you can use information that I've given you in the past to answer that. The next one is give examples of mitigating efforts in relation to climate change and give examples of adaptive effort in relation to climate change. This can be found in the textbook chapter related to this session. And it says examples. So I want you to give me multiple examples of adaptive and mitigating. Make sure I understand what you mean. So if you just put adaptive means that we drive better fuel efficient cars. What does that mean? Okay, I need you to be a little bit more detailed in your answers so that I can give you full credit. Section 10 is population. What are 2 social consequences of the One China Child policy? Make sure you give me social consequences and in-depth social consequences. I need at least 2. Okay. What does the term carrying capacity mean? Why does the human population need to remain below the carrying capacity in order to be sustainable? Both of these questions were asked in forum posts. Now, it doesn't mean that if you got all 10 points that I am okay with your answer. It just means that sometimes I want you to tailor your answer to a little bit more detail for the final exam. So please take note to that. Really make sure you have the right answers for that. I've made a bunch of comments on some of your forum posts that you didn't answer the actual question. And so I want you to make sure that you are really, really in depth. Also, of course, look for my roundup, which will give you some help on what I'm looking for in the answer to that question. And what does the carrying capacity mean? Why does the human population need to be? That was another forum post question. And of course, that carrying capacity line is really important. And we need to stay below it or we're going to run out of resources and then the human population is going to die. That's really the answer, but of course you need to elaborate on that in the exam portal. But you could find, of course, information on that in the textbook. Session 11, why is the water cycle important, including your explanation, all of the parts of the water cycle, including evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, groundwater, surface water, runoff. I want you to make sure you explain those, but of course, the big thing is I want you to explain why the water cycle is super important. I do not want you to tell me because it cycles water. I want you to explain why it's so important. All the water that we have is what we have right now on our planet, and it has to cycle through this system in order for certain species to be able to have the water that they need. Okay, so I want you to address those kind of situations in your answer. What are permeable versus non-permeable surfaces and their effect on runoff? What are the environmental consequences of surface water runoff? I want you to give me that. That can be found in the textbook. Flooding, of course, is one of the major examples of surface water runoff or the consequence of surface water runoff. And permeable versus impermeable surfaces means that it's concrete versus grass. So areas that let water through versus areas that do not allow water through. And there's a lot of problems with that. And the text talks about this in this chapter. Define point source and non-point source pollution in relation to water, not air, because point source and non-point source pollution is different when we talk about air than it is when we talk about water. Give 2 examples of point source pollution and 2 examples of non-point source pollution in terms of water, not air. Make sure you explain why they're non-point, why they're point source. Don't just list out fertilizers, dog poop. Well, what does that mean? It's because we can't trace them back to the source. That's what makes it non-point source pollution. What are the consequences of bottled water use? You can find these answers in the story of bottled water. I think there might be another article under the module, but there's tons of consequences to bottled water. Plastic degradation of plastic into smaller pieces that species eat, and then we eat those species, and we're finding more and more plastic in humans now. So there's a lot of consequences of bottled water. This, of course, will be a forum post question, so you can develop your answer as you're developing your forum post answer, and that way you can answer one of the questions before the final exam has even happened. Okay, and then session 12, non-renewable resources. Explain the difference between renewable and non-renewable energy. I want you to explain the difference between the two and then provide examples in your explanation of both renewable and non-renewable energy sources, and I want you to explain them. Okay, why are they renewable? Why are they not renewable? And the examples why that's renewable and non-renewable. Okay, and then the next part under non-renewable, and this is of course a big question on the final exam, relates to the film that you're required to watch. So you can either use Gasland 1 or Gasland 2. They both cover the topic in depth, but I want you to talk about one issue from Gasland, so air pollution, water pollution, looking for cheap gas. That's really what the main short-term interest is, a cheap energy source, rather than thinking about the long-term interests of society. So you could take one sector that's discussed in the film and explain why it's a tragedy of the commons. Okay, contamination of surface water, contamination of air, contamination of surface water. So there's a lot of examples given in that film, and I want you to pick one and then explain why it's a tragedy of the commons. Of course, it has to be at least 300 words and contain sources from the film. I will know, because everyone always uses the same example. Well, they lit their water on fire, because they go to YouTube and that's the #1 clip on YouTube. I want a more in-depth answer than that. Okay, and then session 13, describe in detail 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages to one type of renewable energy sources given to review in this class. These advantages and disadvantages need to be detailed. I want you to pick one. I do not want you to give me overall 3 advantages and disadvantages to renewable energy. I need you to pick one type. So pick pick solar, pick wind, pick geothermal, pick bio, pick water. You can pick any of the renewable resources, but I need you to pick one and then give me 3 advantages and disadvantages to that one type of renewable resource. Okay, so that is a walkthrough. Oh, sorry, last one. Why are renewable energy sources less likely to be accepted by the mainstream population? And this is talked about specifically in the textbook chapter on renewable energy. There are examples given as to why we do not accept it, why it's going to be hard to overcome the hurdle of using renewable energy. And so that is found in the textbook chapter. So make sure you go back and look at that, and you'll see there's like items listed out, so you can pick some of those and write about those. Okay, so that gives you a good walkthrough of the final exam. Of course, reach out if you have any questions. Remember, you need to use sources that I have given you. So I do not want you to using outside sources. Everything that you have available in the modules is here and can answer these questions. So please make sure you're using sources that I have given you. Okay, I look forward to your final exams. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out.